Hello again, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. We call it the Bill Gephardt Show, and we have a huge show for you today. It's packed. First of all, we have Jim Winder. He's the former sheriff of Salt Lake County. He'll talk to us philosophically about how maybe we can prevent some of these problems with all this protesting, which turns into rioting in the future. Also, he reveals a secret that he's not revealed before. You'll be very interested to hear about that. Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox will join us. He is running for governor, one of the leading candidates. He'll talk about if we're prepared for another pandemic if it breaks out. And by the way, he'll talk about should we be gathering, like having a concert right now? Very interesting conversation. Also, Jim Dabakis, he is a Democratic gadfly, basically. You've seen him before, former Utah Senator, ex-chair of the Democratic Party, and he will tell us, among many other things, a friend of his who you should not elect governor, he says. Also, Rocky Anderson, former Salt Lake Mayor Rocky Anderson. He is an activist doing a whole bunch of stuff, not just running for president, maybe again under his Justice Party. He'll also talk about reform in jail and reform in the prison systems. And he says he can prove it is a matter of life or death. Also, Rod Decker. Now, you know Rod Decker. I worked with him for years. He has a unique take on everything, and he'll have a unique take on everything we have talked about so far. So let's get at it. All right, let's talk to Jim Winder now. You remember him. He's the former sheriff of Salt Lake County, and he is currently the chief investigator. I believe that's what you are, the chief investigator for the district attorney's office for Sim Gill's office. Is that correct, Jim?
I am, but I want to be very clear. I'm speaking today here in my capacity as a citizen. I'm not representing the agency, but that is where I'm currently employed.
All right. Well, let me do it over. Let's talk to Jim Winder now, ordinary citizen. How's that sound better?
I just want to be clear that I don't want to cause any problems for my wonderful employer.
Oh, you won't. No, you won't. We'll be talking about a little bit of that later, but we'll see shortly about that. But really, I want to talk about the protests and things that are going on. You have been in law enforcement. What is it, 40 years or so, 30 or 40 years?
Yeah, right around there, about 35, be 36 here in October.
And, you know, the top manager, if you will, the sheriff of Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. So you would be involved in training. You might even schedule training and on and on. How do you think we're doing so far in Salt Lake City?
Well, I want to be very clear. You know, armchair quarterbacking, these kinds of things, when you're not the individual that
Sure.
is actually managing it, you have to be very, very careful. But what I will say is last night's protest in particular, I thought was, the direction we need to be heading. I thought that the communication and the interaction was very good. When these kinds of events occur, though, everyone should recognize that they almost always will take agencies by surprise. And so the first day, there was a lot of hiccups. But
it was tipping over cars, setting them on fire, some of these things.
That's right.
You know, is a little bit more than a peaceful protest.
And Bill, as you well know, in our community, we have really anticipated, expected, and had protests that were of a very different tone, with few exceptions. Over the years, of course, I've been involved when we had the Raceway riot, for lack of a better term, when the old Bonneville Raceway went kind of berserk on us, and we had the Bears during the Olympics and some other events. But those were very isolated and had some other factors. The idea of having people come to downtown to the police department and the city and county building and behave like that is new to everybody here.
Some people have a message, and this is the criticism that we hear. Some people have a message, about police brutality, and they're trying to, and others, break windows and loot. And there seems to be a divide there. Some people have a message, and some people don't even know what the message is. I wonder if there's some thought behind that. That it's even some of the looters sometimes are part of the message. Maybe they're just angry and they don't know what else to do. Does that make sense? Is that something you think is true?
I totally, and I'm glad you're looking at it in a nuanced way, because a lot of people don't. Human psychology, which is what at the end of the day we've got to distill this down to, and I don't claim to be a psychologist in any way,
Sure.
shape, or form, but I've been dealing with people all these many years in crisis circumstances, and you start to learn a few things about people, and their behavior changes when they get into certain environments. A classic example: you go into a bar fight. The very guy you might be wrestling around on the floor with, is a doctor, lawyer,
Yes.
carpenter.
Sure.
He's a wonderful guy, but something's gotten into his head. And this protest, when you get a group of people, one portion of which comes down there to exercise absolutely their free speech rights and complain about what are very legitimate concerns, which are police interactions.
Sure.
You have other people that come down there, and they're kind of there to see the show. But as it starts getting more dynamic, then maybe they can throw the odd bottle because they're angry at the police anyway, or they don't like authority, or there's 100 reasons. And so
Yes.
all of these confluences of why people are there begin to meld, and then it creates a new dynamic, which is an amalgam of all of these unusual concerns. And that's where you get, that's why you can't treat these like we're just talking to Black Lives Matter. We're just talking to looters. We're just talking to people that came down there to just observe it. It takes on a new dynamic.
All right.
Why it becomes so very difficult to manage.
And how do you handle that? Because I was involved in the Rodney King riots. Okay. It was right in the middle of that stuff. I got whacked. I got, bloodied, all kinds of things. But I was rather forgiving of that, even as a reporter. Nobody had any personal problems with me when I got whacked. And at the same time, I saw some people that I didn't like very much who would break the windows of a liquor store and go in and steal all the booze and leave all the potato chips and chewing gum behind. And then I would see other people who I had more sympathy for, frankly, who would, somebody would have opened up a grocery store. You see people coming out with toilet paper and a chicken to feed their family. It seems like there was a difference there. And how do you handle differences like that, the ones we're talking about, as a police officer in your training?
Again, Bill, you've hit that is, I'm going to steal that analogy moving forward, because that is exactly where I'm going with this. As a police officer, it's not a blanket approach to any of this. You're trying to deal with individual circumstances in the moment. And for people who have not had to do that, and it is novel to say the least, and it is totally foreign to most people in their work environments. If you're a dentist, you're dealing with people every day to fix their teeth, and they generally behave the same way. And there's
yes.
But in a police environment, you show up, and it suddenly is completely a different circumstance. So your mind is constantly shifting about, what is this person's motivation? And sometimes you get it wrong.
So how do you train for this stuff?
Oh, I'm sorry?
I say, how do you train for this stuff?
It starts with selection. You've got to find human beings, and let's remember the policemen are human beings. You got to find human beings that have experience, that have empathy, and that have common sense. The individuals I liked to hire the most were between the ages of 25 and 45. I liked people that had worked, frankly, some blue collar jobs in their life.
Yes.
And people that will be offended by this. Somebody comes right out of college or so on. I loved hiring people that had been on missions because what they're bringing with them is a encyclopedia. Their software has some different components where they've had to deal with people in these different kinds of circumstances. And then what you do is, taking a person that has that kind of background, then you slowly introduce them as best you can through field training and other environments to increasingly complex and stressful environments. And you watch, see how they handle that. And Then you have a discipline and a training, retraining process in place that when you start seeing them react problematically, or in some cases, abnormally.
Yes.
You make a quick decision. You say, you're not suited for this job. And that's where you're going with this, because think about this. You can put a person in a riot gear, and we did this during the Olympics to
Sure.
5,000 officers, and you can go out there and you can pretend to be a protester all day long and talk to them how it's going to be, right? But in the back of their mind, what do they know, Bill? It's a training, and it's to some extent it's a game. Whole different deal when they're out there in the real world and someone is telling them they are ugly, or they're using the most foul and abusive language, or
I know.
thrown some substance, or they have. That's when you got to dig deep in your reservoir of experiences and think to yourself, why is this person doing this to me? Is it because they don't have a chicken and toilet paper at home?
Yes.
Is it because they like to go steal shoes and run off with them? I mean, all of those things you just mentioned, and as a policeman, you're kind of constantly in this diagnosis mode, and sometimes you get it wrong.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes people are just plain angry.
Which is, if you want my opinion, that's what's driving what we're seeing nationwide, Bill. Is the fundamental issue in this country is so many people feel disenfranchised for so many different reasons, and these protests are not just about, and people will be mad at me for saying this, they're not just about the Black Lives Matter movement. We've got people coming in, the 3%ers and the Boogaloo Boys and all of these other these factions.
Do you think a lot of people are coming in from the outside when you talk about Boogaloo Boys? There's a lot of that going on, that most of the agitation comes from outside. What do you think?
I think that's conspiracy theory, that there is some paid or some directed or some grand plan to move these people around. When I say they're coming in, if I'm a guy that lives in northern Idaho, and I know there's going to be a protest in Salt Lake about Black Lives Matters, and my particular beef is, frankly, I'm a white supremacist and I'm pissed at those people and I want to go down there and express myself. You got to drive down here and get involved, and I think it happens. Who is somebody putting them up to it? That's a bridge too far in my opinion.
Is, I agree. For whatever it's worth, I agree. Let me, when it comes to training and stuff, let me go down a little bit different road. If they put me on the committee, that is for police reform, so we have different races of people, and then somebody selected me, I would use my journalism and newsroom experience to say, if someone in the newsroom, and this has happened in 3 newsrooms that I've been in multiple times, including here in Salt Lake, if some reporter begins making up facts or begins intentionally slanting a story, others in the newsroom will rat out that reporter because it makes us look bad. Police don't like to rat on each other. So the suggestion, I guess, I would have, and I don't even know if it's practical, is we already know the problems that people have, the poverty, the racism, and things like that. But I wonder if there's anything to somehow making it so that police officers rat each other out. If one guy plants a gun, the other guy says, that guy planted a gun. And I know that's an extreme, but I wonder if there's, I forget what that's called. It's not thin blue line. It's where the police officers don't want to. Go ahead.
You're describing the philosophy of the code of silence, which referred forever, and it's highlighted famously by Joseph Wambaugh's thin blue line, where officers were involved in misdeeds and others covered it up. And Bill, it happens. I don't think it's widespread, and it's less widespread in certain areas of the country than others, and so we can't realize. But to your point, which I think is absolutely dead on. Remember, you talked about the training and how do you get these guys to manage themselves. The other key component is supervision, because, and I'll use the analogy you just used. You got 2 cub reporters.
Yeah.
They're of equal, seniority and pecking order, and one is watching one maybe slant a story a little bit or whatever. The other, he's going to be a little reticent to just jump right up and be the guy that says, "Hey, Bob, that's not the facts, and it, and by the way, I'm going to management."
Yes. That does happen.
And it's happened in law enforcement where officers observe, especially when it's very aberrant behavior. But the other thing you're supposed to do in all lines of work, but it's most critical, I think, in law enforcement, is you have to have a supervision ratio where you have senior, high quality first line supervisors, sergeants, that are watching and monitoring and observing this kind of thing and setting the expectations. And that's the mechanism that one really has to try and rely on most to.
Okay, a little accountability might help prevent some problems. I don't know. And I guess there is. I'm not like it's not as if I'm saying there's no accountability for crying out loud. But I hear this complaint, and I don't know if we could give people more confidence in that regard somehow. You know.
We could, because we're quickly losing it, and the social contract that we have all operated on, especially you and I during our lives, where the expectation used to be when I turned on my red and blue lights, a person pulled over, I walked up, I asked them a question, and they answered it, and that's, by the way, that's voluntary. People do that because there's a social contract, and you know what? People are now saying, I don't know that I'm just going to do all that.
You cannot outrun a radio, okay? How many times do I have to tell everybody you can't outrun a radio, okay?
I don't think they're worried about outrunning the radio. What you do is you walk up on the side of the window and they say, you can't stop me, and I'm not giving you my license. And by the way, because I'm from Magna, or I'm from, Cottonwood Heights, or whatever. And
you know what? I got a better way. Here you go, officer. Sorry I was speeding, and sometimes they let you go, That's a better way.
Unlikely.
Yeah. Let me change the subject before I let you go to one other thing. You are no stranger to politics. You've been through the campaigns, and you were sheriff in Salt Lake County for a long time, and then you left us for a little while, and you went down to Moab, and now you're back here working for Sim Gill. And I'm just wondering if there's politics in your future. If you've come back here that's the talk among some of us that Jim Winter's going to run for something.
Well, Bill, that's an interesting question. And
yes, it is. Now I want an interesting answer.
Well, I'll give you one. A little long answer, if you'll bear with me.
I will.
When I left the sheriff's office, it was because I had reached a place in my life that, for a variety of reasons, and I won't belabor it, but emotionally and physically and in a lot of ways, I was really in a difficult spot. Doug had died, Doug Barney. We had several other fatalities in close proximity for a variety of reasons. It was just difficult. I needed a break. And God shined on me, and I got an opportunity down in Moab, and I had a great experience down there. My family then, for a variety of reasons, decided to come back up here, and we're back in Salt Lake. I tell you all that for this reason. When I left, I left frustrated that I was not engaged in the progress of our community anymore. And when I'm here now, I feel that same way. The reality of it is, I am contemplating jumping back into politics because I'm not happy at all with some of our current options.
Okay.
Respect people, but I think there needs to be some different voices. So I am contemplating it.
So what are we going to see, Governor? Dog catcher? What?
Maybe they wouldn't have me for dog catcher, and maybe they won't have me for anything else, Bill. But I'm exploring some options.
Yes, they will. Oh, knock it off! They would keep electing you sheriff, and they'd keep doing it if you were still here.
Well,
so we'll keep our eyes open, I guess.
But we're gonna see what all happens here, and this community's too doggone important to not stay involved. How's that?
It's good enough for me because I think it's too doggone important as well. Jim Winder, former sheriff of Salt Lake County and currently at the district attorney's office as the chief investigator. You have been very, very insightful today, and I appreciate you joining me.
Well, thank you so very much. And appreciate it done for our community, Bill, and I mean that.
Thank you.
Take care, sir.
I'm joined now by Utah Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. How are you?
I'm doing as well as possible under the circumstances, Bill. It's
That's right.
With you.
Do you wear a mask ever?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, well, so do I, but we're just talking to computers, so we won't have a problem with the coronavirus just talking to our computers. But on that note, I think that our governor and you too, I suppose, were, if I may be so bold, this is just my opinion, we're right on top of this thing from the beginning. In terms of the stay-at-home stuff and whatever we were doing, how did you figure out to be way ahead of other states? Were you looking at the Washington State, what they were doing, or how'd that work?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. We've been fortunate to have a couple advantages here in the state of Utah. One, we have really, really smart people that we've surrounded ourselves with, and we also have people in the state that are willing to work together and to figure things out. And so there were a couple things that happened. One, we were watching Washington State and New York very closely, but more importantly, we were looking at other countries and how they were responding. And we had watched specifically South Korea the most closely,
Yes.
and decided early on that we were going to model our response after them. And their response was really about testing and contact tracing. And so from the beginning, we decided everything we did had to be around increasing testing capacity and
Okay.
increasing contact tracing. That's the only way to go on the offensive against this disease, and that allowed us to be ahead of some of the other states.
Okay. But now we're getting the word that we're opening everything up. We're going to open up the schools. It seems like we'd open up the schools of both the K through 12 as well as colleges in the fall. But as I read that more closely, they are available to open right now, right?
No,
Okay.
that's not correct. Not until the fall.
Okay. Is that risky? And the reason I ask is because this started with one person, and then went to two, and then four and eight, and on and on. I worry about schools, and I know when I had very young children, everybody was healthy in the house until they went to kindergarten, came home, and sneezed on everybody. So I worry about that.
Yeah, my wife called our kids the germ monkeys
That
because
they absolutely are.
yeah, that's how it happens. So certainly there is risk, and again, these are decisions that will be reevaluated as we get closer to fall. What we're doing now is putting in place the preparations from what we know about the disease today, which is much more than we knew 2 months ago. And by
Yes.
the way, I suspect we'll know a lot more about the disease in August than we know today, so that we can make better decisions about who is impacted and how it is transmitted.
Okay.
What we have learned, and a couple things. Again, one of the reasons for the decisions that were made was to make sure we didn't overwhelm our healthcare system. That has been the case. We've done very, very well. Then we have lots of capacity in our healthcare system. So that was one reason for doing what we were doing. The second one was to help give us time to figure out how this disease impacts different people and how do we protect those people. What we do know right now, in the state of Utah, is that about half the fatalities have come from our long-term care facilities. So right now we are testing everyone in our long-term care facilities, workers and patients that are staying there, and making sure we can protect them. We know that those with underlying health issues, specifically diabetes,
Yeah.
cardiovascular disease, immunocompromised, are more at risk. So how do we protect those people? What is the result of mask wearing? A new study out today shows that it's maybe more important than even some of the best experts thought. And so can we use that in a way that reduces risk to people? So it's all about risk. We are concerned. All the experts are concerned about a spike in the fall. We've certainly seen that in other pandemics. In 1918, that happened. And so we are watching those numbers very closely, and that will influence our decisions as we get closer to fall.
So, to sum all this up, it sounds to me like, yes, a decision has been made, but it's a very kinetic decision. It could change any time. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely, and that's true of all the decisions we have made. The governor has been very clear from day one that we are going to make data-driven decisions, and that can cut either way. That's it. Those decisions have allowed us to open up much of the state to allow people to get back to work, to recreating, but in smart ways and safe ways. We still watch that data. The good news now is because we do have mobile testing, and we have plenty of testing and contact tracing capacity, so we can be much more surgical in our approach. If there is a hotspot, we can actually go to that zip code. We can get everyone tested in that zip code. We can can isolate those who have the disease, and that's something it was impossible to do 2 months ago.
The Collin Ray concert. You're the lieutenant governor of the whole state. How do you feel about things like that when somebody seems to be so determined to have this? I guess in the interest of freedom or something, they're determined to have this concert. Do you have a feeling about that?
Well, sure, and my feeling is that I have empathy with them. I agree with them. We all want to be able to get back to that sense of normalcy. And as we learn more, there are ways that we can do these things safely. We do know that being outside is better than being inside. That
Yes.
wearing masks is better than not wearing masks. Being spread apart is better than being close together. And so what we really want to do is we want to allow people to do those things, and also protect the health and safety of those who are most vulnerable. And it's finding that balance.
Okay.
Utah, I think, has done a better job than other states. In fact, there was
Actually, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, the study came out that said that we have the fifth fewest restrictions on people of any other state. That means there are 45 states that are more restrictive.
All right.
So if it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that's one of the false choices we've been presented here.
So there's no enforcement action. If they want to have a concert, they can have a concert. Nobody's going to put handcuffs on anybody or anything like that.
We have not done any of that here in the state of Utah. You've seen that in other states, people running on the beach and the police shaking them down. And, that's not how we do things here. We are relying on our local health departments. They're so important. There are 13 of them across the state. Some of them are county by county, but in places like where I live in Sanpete County, there's one health department that covers 6 counties. And they work with permitting, as they always do. They work with local law enforcement on those things. But yeah, we're not locking people up and arresting people for exercising their rights.
All right, so the Collin Ray concert gets to go on if people want to go. All right. I'm confused, and I think a lot of us are, about face masks and social distancing and many of these things. Moments ago, our president tweeted that the coronavirus continues to spread around the world. Not good. That's what he said, not good, which I think is self-evident. But he doesn't want to wear a mask. Sometimes we're supposed to wear a mask. You go into the stores, sometimes 50%, sometimes 80%, sometimes 20% are wearing masks. And has this become a political thing, whether or not to social distance and whether or not to wear a mask? You're making a statement as opposed to just being safe? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it's absolutely become a political thing, and it's maybe one of the most disappointing things I've seen. It's the nature of where we are, especially over the past 4 to 6 years. Everything becomes political, and it makes me so sad. Part of the issue is that this is a novel virus, and there's so much we don't know about it, including the experts. And the experts are sometimes wrong, and they learn and they change.
Yes.
And yet. For the layperson, we see that as conspiracy or whatever.
Yeah, no.
So in the beginning, we were told don't wear masks.
Yeah.
Masks don't help. And now the science is saying actually masks really do help, because we know the primary method of spread is through droplets that come out of our mouth. Not just the droplets you can see, but the tiny ones that become an aerosol that you can't see. There was a new, much more comprehensive study that was done. I was just reading it this morning that showed that masks do play a significant role in limiting the droplets that are coming out of our mouths. And because this can be spread asymptomatically, in fact, now they're estimating between 40 and 50% of all the spread is happening asymptomatically.
Yeah.
If everybody does wear masks, when we are in close close situations inside, a mask will seriously reduce the rate of spread. And if that's if that's true, and again,
Yeah.
I'm not the expert, but if that's true, then and we could stop or significantly slow the spread of this just by wearing a mask in tight, close public situations. We could get the economy back to normal. We could get things rolling for a very small price. And so I hope we can take the politics out of this. We can encourage people to do the right thing. And again, it's to protect other people, not just to protect us. And we can make a significant difference.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, it's so good to see you. Sounds like this is really a kinetic situation. It's going to be with us for, who knows, years. I hope you'll check in back with us here as things move forward. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Thank you, Bill. Good luck.
You bet. Bye-bye. Are you working from home or are you going into the office? Because we are, aren't we, into a new normal where we're finding it sometimes more efficient to actually work from home, and our bosses and company owners are finding it more efficient to work from home. Facebook has announced that in a little while, half of their entire workforce is going to be working from home. So I want to talk to an expert about all this. Joining us now is Adam Sessions. Adam Sessions is with a company called OneWire, and these are the guys who they take care of my office system. And I have an office system that's both at the office and at various employees' home, put together by Adam Sessions and his people at OneWire. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today, Adam, because this is a new normal with this pandemic and on and on. I think people are starting to move away from formal offices, if you will, and more toward your home. And that's why I wanted to chat with you today. What are you doing about that?
Well, Bill, I appreciate being invited in.
Sure.
It is definitely becoming the norm. We're finding that folks are asking us for ways to both exist in a physical office, but at the same time be able to transition bodies home and be able to handle the internet, be able to handle the wireless internet, and be able to seamlessly integrate the phone calls that they need to take and make to conduct business.
Thing. It all seemed, and I say that in the past tense after having dealt with your company, it all seems so complicated. People in businesses are doing financial stuff or roofing or plumbing or whatever it is they're doing and can't pay a lot of attention to this. It seems so complicated. But after you, it's not complicated anymore. Tell me, what do you do for people? I mean, I know, but you tell me. What do you do for people to make it so it's, how can I work from my home and my office and my employee on different parts of the state or different parts of the country or the world?
Well, listen, Bill, I'd really like to take more credit for it than I probably deserve. But the reality is the technology has just improved vastly through the years. Certainly since we first started in 2006. So we've been around a bit, and the technology has gotten better. It's gotten easier to deploy. It's gotten much easier to manage. And frankly, we worked hard at making it look easy, I guess.
Well, that's right. I would not accept from you the fact that it's all about technology. I think there's a certain bedside manner. You made it easy for me and all my people. And I want to talk about you and your company. What you didn't just say, here, have some phones, and these are voice over internet protocol VoIP phones and video. And you made it so easy.
Yeah. Well, the reality is we do work very hard on our culture. It's just something that we've had from day one. We really focus on the small to medium-sized businesses that are here in Utah. But we've been fortunate enough to expand. I mean, those businesses that are here in Utah organically have sprouted up in other states. And the technology with voice over IP in general just lends itself incredibly well to scatter people to their homes, to put offices in other locations. And frankly, anywhere you have a solid, reliable internet connection, you can operate the system just as if you're sitting in the next room.
Which is something you do as well. I mean, that is a focus of your business, installing internet OneWire, as it were, internet capability and fast internet.
That's exactly where the name came from. It was really sort of a convergence of the internet access and doing away with phone lines and whatnot, and bringing everything onto one internet connection, because it really is your only connection you need to the outside world from a communication standpoint. And now with the advent of web phones and video chat and apps on your cell phones, you really can be anywhere. And we look at work now as really more of a space really than a physical place.
Take me through that, please. I've got an employee, let's say, working at home, another couple at the office, another on the other side. How does that work? phones and stuff. What is it you tell me?
So you may end up having one or two people or a few that exist at a physical location where, like for instance, for us through the pandemic scenario, we've had a few people at the office that are taking deliveries from both FedEx and UPS, the phones that are coming in, and a few customer service folks that are here, but the vast majority are at their homes. And those folks that are at their homes, instead of having a physical phone that sits on their desk, they're actually using a web phone, very similar to this Zoom scenario,
Yes.
and video chatting that we're doing,
Yes.
where they have the ability to use a headset and they take the phone call on their computer, and they can physically see back into the office to see who's available if they need to transfer a phone call, or who might be on a phone call at another home if they need to conference in somebody else that can help answer a question, or maybe they have a billing question or something like that. There's a physical interface that allows them to see who's on a call, who's available. They can chat internally. So it's a pretty powerful tool when you have a workforce that's diverse in terms of the geography, but to the outside world, they don't know any different. It just feels like we're all together.
No, it doesn't. All right, Adam Sessions, I'm going to call you back here if in a while. We can just call one wire, and it's as simple as a phone call, I suppose, for you to begin this process, which seemed very complicated to me at first. But then after you guys came into my office and our homes, frankly, it seemed very easy. So let me talk to you again about this as we get into the new normal, the new way of doing business. All right, Adam Sessions.
Thank you.
With one wire. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Well, look who I've got with me now. Jim Dabakis. He is a general liberal Democratic gadfly. He was in the not U.S. Senate, but the Utah Senate, former chair of the Utah Democratic Party. I would say you'd call him a general liberal. And now, Jim, is it true you've become, shall we say, a Republican?
Yes.
A conservative Republican?
I wouldn't go that far. Yeah.
Oh, tell me the strategy. What are we doing here?
The Republicans have for 2 generations set up a fixed rig system in electing officials in the state of Utah. It's just rigged. It's the way it is. And when it comes to governor, a small group within the Republican Party has picked every single gubernatorial candidate since 1983. And I just thought, this election matters more than any I can ever remember. I know these 4 gentlemen. I know them all. And I know them, some of them really well. And the whole future of the state of Utah for the next, who knows, 4, 8, 12 years is going to be determined on June 30th. And the Republicans have locked us out, and they've locked out every independent voter. And this small fringe group is all worked up, and they're going to run out and pick the next governor of the state of Utah. And I said, no, I'm sick and tired of being locked out of that opportunity to decide who's going to be the governor. Now,
I had not thought of this. I just had not thought of this as a strategy. Anybody could become anything they want, just simply declare it, right?
Well, the Republicans have said you have to declare yourself a Republican in order to vote in our primary. And remember, a Democrat hasn't won since 1983. I mean, this is most likely going to be the decision about who's going to be the governor. So the question is, since there is no Democratic primary for governor, why not become a Republican, register online, become a Republican, and have a say as to whether the crazy Trump guy, Greg Hughes, my friend, becomes governor? Because right now he's ahead. He's going to win. It's a prediction from me. You've got Cox, you've got Huntsman, and they are fighting over the semi-reasonable Republican Party. And I'm predicting Hughes is going to trample right in there with that Trump group, and he's going to be the governor. And I don't think reasonable Utahns want my friend Greg to be governor.
And how will you do this? How is it? Do you have others who are becoming Republicans with you? How is this going to play out?
Yeah, so
in
there'll
your
be
view?
probably 250,000 people that will vote in this Republican primary on June 30th, which isn't that many. So you start dividing that by 4 candidates, and 10, 15,000 people can sway this one way or another for the Republican nominee. That doesn't mean you become a Republican and you can't vote for the Democrat in November. You can't do anything else. It's a little piece of paper. And the governor of Utah is not the governor of the Republican Party. He's for all of us, or she in this case. So very simply, you just go right here.
Vote.utah.gov.
And the first question is, do you have a Utah driver's license? And if you do, you type in your number, and 3 clicks later, you are a Republican. And you have the same vote as Mike Lee. And you can vote for the candidate who's got the experience, who's got the gravitas, and who can run the state in a way that is not going to be a huge embarrassment. And look, I say this, I mean, I like Greg. He's really my friend. And we communicate a lot, but I'm telling you, he's the wrong guy to be the governor. He's wrong on virtually every issue.
Yeah, you'll be friends. I can just see you'll be friends for life. Okay, this is my now Republican friend, Jim Dabakis. And let me ask you about, change the subject here, about COVID. What do you think about this reopening thing and the strategy of reopening? What are we doing?
I think the state had a reasonable strategy. They were playing it normal. They were
in the beginning.
And then guess what happened? That fringe I'm talking about in the Republican Party, this group is who all Republican politicians in the state are terrified about. They came out, they first had 27 county commissioners and rural guys saying, write a letter to the governor and to Spencer Cox and say, we're sick and tired of this. Not only do we not want to be closed, we want the entire state, including Salt Lake City, to open up. And then
freedom, they said.
That made them shake, the administration. And then the next thing that happened, they had this rally, and the next moment, Governor Herbert crumbled. Spencer Cox, who's in charge of the committee that runs COVID in the state, they all went, no, we're going to open, whether we have the number of testing or the contacts set up or whatever. We haven't met the criteria, but we're going to open up. And now what have we seen? 2 days ago was the highest number of new cases. Hospitalizations are going up. Testing is going way down. I'm saying that this is why you need leaders of gravitas who can stand up and if they would have held with it another couple of weeks, so we could have got a spike into the heart of that COVID, we would have been in a lot better shape. But here we go.
I'm not even sure personally speaking, I'm not sure a couple of weeks will do it. I don't know what the answer is, but it only takes one guy who has the virus, who might not even show symptoms, to sneeze on one other guy at the Rotary Club. They all go home, their wives get it. Wherever they go, it's spread and on and on. I just don't know what the end is.
One of the things you have to do is you can't be pussyfooting around about masks and covering your face. You can't pretend, it's a constitutional choice. It's a life and death choice. And
it's science.
And the governor ought to at least give stores and businesses the right to forbid people from entering from their own property if they so choose. And then you get into where Governor Herbert usually goes, which is the pay to play. $125 million in emergency funding, booted out the door, no accounting, no, all the general contractual requirements for the state are waived. And guess who ends up with money? Some guy
125 million
got the president's malaria medicine, and 8 million is scheduled to go to them. They only get 800,000 out. And then the governor says with a straight face, this is a serious matter. We're going to do an investigation. And then he appoints his staff to investigate him and his staff. Then in his press conference, he goes, well, I've looked into it. It's all okay. Nobody did anything wrong. And let's just move on. Let's put that behind us. We don't want to waste time. And then this fiasco with Test Utah. Look, we
Yes.
don't need more of this same old thing. That's why
Okay.
I
All right, and that's why.
took the
Yeah, vote.utah.gov. One more thing, they're going to have that concert. I guess you can't put handcuffs on people who show up, right?
Well, look, I'll tell you, if you had a governor who wasn't so worried about the election, if you had a governor that stood up, he would go, not in my state. We're not doing this. We have rule of law here. But they have rule of law when it comes to minority people in inner cities. But the rule of law goes away when it's Representative Lyman wandering through sacred territory, or when it's protesters that want to spread the virus more. It's a funny rule of law we have in Utah sometimes. So look, it's really important. Go here and
hold it up so I can see it. There it is. Vote.
Become a Republican so you can vote. It'll come in the mail, and you can vote for the right person. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for.
Vote.utah.gov is the place to go to do that stuff. Okay, Jim Dabakis, we're going to have you back.
Any old time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you. Thanks. All right. In these rather uncertain times, the pandemic and all, and we're all many of us sitting at home, although we're starting to come back a little bit. But who better to talk to about all of this than maybe the most trusted man in Utah, Rod Decker. Hi, Rod.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Would you think that's a good description, the most trusted man in Utah?
No. Yeah. I go to a bar. I say, give me a drink on credit. They say, in God we trust. Decker, you pay.
That's great. They do the same thing to me. All right. Well, Rod Decker is the author of this book, Utah Politics, The Elephant in the Room, and his pictures are on the back. And I think he looks about the same, don't you, as he did with this was published about a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, a year ago.
And it contains everything you'd need. It goes back into the history before you were born, doesn't it, of Utah politics?
Goes back to the settlement by the Latter-day Saint pioneers.
An interesting read. I haven't finished it. I've started it, but I haven't finished it. I think I'll finish it when I come to see you, and you put your author's autograph right inside the jacket.
I'll be happy to autograph it.
Okay, I'll be by. All right, what are you doing? What do you think of this whole pandemic and the politics sitting around it? What do you think?
Well, the pandemic may determine this next election. It may decide who's going to be president, who's going to run things. Donald Trump looked as if he had a shot, but this pandemic may hurt him. It's not going to hurt the Republicans in Utah.
I am hearing that Mitt Romney is endorsing the Democrat, not Donald Trump. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that, and it might be true, but it'll surprise me some if it is.
What did you think about all that when Mitt Romney was the only senator to vote against impeachment?
Well, I don't know as I agreed with Romney about, but I surely respect him for it. That was a guts move.
Okay. We talked politics in the nation with this pandemic. What about politics locally? Never mind the election, just how is it affecting everything?
Well, if you're talking politics, you're talking the election. If you're just talking about how it affects people's lives, Utah's doing pretty well comparatively. Utah has a lower death rate than most other states. We were in the bottom 5. We've got a low infection rate. We're doing okay so far. Now, we're not done yet, and it's going to some more people are going to die.
I give a lot of credit. I don't know about you, but I give a lot of credit to our current governor, who, regardless of politics, seemed to see what was going on with this coronavirus very early. Do you agree with that?
I think he's done well. Now, it's awfully hard to say who's done well and who's done poorly, because at least I don't know what you're supposed to do. Sweden says, don't quarantine, don't shut down, lock up your old people, lock up your people like me, but other people should get, they go to restaurants, they go out, they have higher cases now, but they say in the long run, they won't have higher cases and they won't have as much economic damage.
Yeah, that herd immunity, I'm not positive I buy into that.
Well, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll look at Sweden and we'll compare it to Norway and Denmark and to the United States. In the end, we may know something. Now, if I were king, I'd do a quarantine. I'd go along with the conventional wisdom, but I don't know whether that's right.
I would tend to agree with you. I think, without knowing, that everybody getting back to normal in various ways, some more disciplined, I suppose, than others, I think we're going to be back where we started. And we're going to wind up closing things down again. And all of this pain we've suffered over the past couple months, we're going to have to repeat. Do you agree with that, or do you think something else?
I don't know. Surely the pandemic's still around. Surely when we relax, when we start going out, when we start mixing and mingling, we're going to have some new cases. I don't see any reason, one reason possibly. The flu does worse in summer. Summer slows the flu down. Sometimes it kills it. This might be like the flu, so summer may be different than winter. But otherwise, if we mix and mingle, we'll have some cases. It may last until we get a cure or a vaccine. I guess we have a shot of the vaccine.
We make a comparison to the flu, and I've seen this, to the flu and to the deaths by smoking, created by smoking, and the deaths created by heart disease, and on and on and on. And I've seen the coronavirus at the bottom. But my argument is, yeah, but smoking didn't kill all those people in a month. That's my argument for that stuff.
That's true. Now, in most states, not in New York, but I think in Utah, we've had more flu deaths since the pandemic's been going than we've had pandemic deaths. That's true in most states, but the pandemic's going to catch up and surpass the flu before the end.
Yeah. What are you doing? What are you up to? How are you handling all this? You're just in your home there and overlooking the valley. What are you up to?
I go for a walk twice a day mostly. Other than that, I don't go out very much. I walk. I go to the grocery store. I'm writing articles, historical articles, and I spend time on my computer. I take frequent naps, as befits a retired gentleman.
Get in line.
And that's sort of what I'm doing.
Are you going to write another one of these? This is your second book, isn't it?
Second book. I wrote a novel, a mystery story back in the 90s.
And are you going to write another one of these after you get done on your computer?
No. They take 10 years, and I don't have 10 years. I'm like my friend who wants a dog, but he says he's too old. He can't last through a dog. Well, I can't last through a book.
Well, all right. We have this one, at least. How's this one doing?
It's doing okay. It's doing fine. You always wish it'd do better.
Sure.
It's not a hot seller. It's a kind of it attempted to be scholarly, but it's doing better than most of the books by this publisher. That's what I know.
When I came to Salt Lake City to be a reporter, you have a style that I think we could argue is not a standard style that you might see of reporters in the field, the Rod Decker style. But I did notice this. I knew nothing about Utah politics when I first came to town. And I sat in my little motel room getting ready to do some interviews at Channel 2, where you worked and where I ultimately went to work. And I saw you come on the air, and you were explaining some complicated, I don't remember what it was, but some complicated legislative thing that was going on. And you had probably a minute, 10 seconds to do your live shot. And the thing that I really liked about you is you explained it in a minute 10, and without knowing any background or anything, I totally understood what was going on with that issue at the Utah legislature. That's my compliment to you.
Well, that's a great compliment. Thank you very much. Thank you. You could still be running Channel 2 if you wanted.
Me?
Yes,
What would
you.
I be doing about? I didn't run anything. What are you talking
You
about?
you had your way there. You had you more than any reporter, more than I think almost any anchor. You said, "Here are my terms," and you made them take them.
Well,
Yeah, you had a
well,
deal you had an offer from Channel 4. You remember that?
why are you
And they
giving all
needed
this
you.
away?
You held up the back end of the 10. You more than any reporter I've seen in the biz. You said, "Here's what I want to work," and they said, "No, no, 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 we'll never do that." But they ended up doing it. You remember that?
Well, I know it was negotiation. Then we did that thing at I forget the bill number, where the anti-competitive bill that we did after I was out of it, and now people are
And
going
you
across
brought
the, yeah.
that, and it's helped a lot of reporters, and I think a lot of producers too, who it used to be that you signed up, and then if you left them, you couldn't go to work in TV for a year. Now, in most cases, you can. You get access to the job market, and it's been a big help to a lot of reporters.
Well, I agree with non-compete clauses. I just don't agree with unfair ones. The way it was is if you wanted to quit or even go to another station, you had to sit out a full year with no
That's
pay.
right.
And that didn't seem fair. That's the only thing. Now, it's nothing wrong with being held to a non-compete. You were, and I was happy to, as long as it's fair.
Well, okay. Now you have a contract, and the contract says we'll work 3 years. They pay you 3 years, but then at the end of 3 years, in the old days,
That's
at
right.
the end of 3 years, if you said I'd like to go to another station, they've offered me a deal, you had to sit out a year. Now, for the most part, when the contract ends, it ends for them. They don't have to pay you. It ends for you. You can go to work somewhere else.
That's right.
Seems fair to me.
It did, because if you have a contract for lawn care or a roof or a TV station, when the contract is over, I am no longer obligated to you. You are no longer obligated to me until we make. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it went through, and I was happy about that.
Yes, and you were one of the big voices that helped get it through.
Yeah. Well, you kind of say so. Here's what I want to do on this podcast. I want to check in with you from time to time to find out what you're up to.
You could check in with me anytime, provided here we are and we're talking, and but the viewers don't realize we went through a lot of trouble to try to get me on. I'm a technological incompetent, and you guys had to worry to get me on. Anytime you can get me on, I'll come on.
Okay, just leave your phone on, and we'll just check in with you even when you're sleeping. How's that sound?
Yes,
Rod Decker.
No, I like that. You can check in with me anytime.
All right, Rod Decker, I'm going to just say it, the most trusted man in Utah. I'm just going to leave it there. Never mind. And don't forget his book, Utah Politics. It's still wherever you buy your books. Rod Decker, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks. It was fun.
All right, I'm talking to Brian Hendricks at Dream Dental Implants now. And the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because I have heard, now I don't have any implants, but I have heard that you can basically pull all the teeth out and put them all back in and do it in one day, and it doesn't hurt. How can that be?
Yeah, well, it seems too good to be true, right?
Well,
to be able to pull your teeth.
Sometimes just to get something put on your teeth there, they put a temp in, you have to come back. That's not done in one day. I can't imagine doing a whole mouth in one day.
Well, that's the thing is that we've come a long ways in technology, and we've come a long ways in we've progressed so much that literally, if it's well planned out, that's what my office does, is we are able to make a smile happen all in one day. And like you said, most people coming in here either already are in a denture or they have teeth that are bad. And in literally a morning, I extract teeth, put implants, which are basically anchors into the bone, and then we hang a brand new smile in that day. And so it's a lot of work for me as a doctor, but it's life-changing, and it's pretty fun.
Well, if I already have dentures, why do I want these what do you call them? Four, what are they? What is it?
All on 4 bridge.
All in 4.
Yeah. So so someone that has dentures is someone that's had all their teeth extracted, and so the problems you have with a denture is that a denture is moving around your mouth all the time. It falls out, constantly has to be worked on and relined. The worst part is that I don't know if it's the worst part. I don't personally have dentures, but I meet people every day that do, and I hear that they can only chew 30% of the food they used to when they were younger. They can't taste their food because literally the denture, the big piece of plastic, it obstructs all of your senses, your ability to taste the food that you love. And so even if you could argue that the denture looks nice, so much of your lifestyle is restricted, and that's why people come and see me and are looking for something better, and that's why Dream Dental exists.
Yeah, Dream Dental Implants, I think, is the full name, isn't it?
Yes.
Not just Dream Dental. Okay, and this is done in a day, and what's the recovery for this?
Oh, typically patients will take a couple days off. I have some really, really crazy patients that I don't recommend this, but they'll go back to work right the next day. The truth is that you would think you'd be in a lot of pain, but because of my proprietary system and processes, we do a lot of work before the patient ever arrives in my office. I mean, we start them on certain medications, and we do things that really change the game as far as pain. And if they listen, which sometimes can be difficult, especially
that's because we're patients. That's right.
Yes, that's always the tricky thing. If they listen, then their experience is pretty unique. Usually, if you go to my Facebook or YouTube page, you'll see I interview patients a day after surgery, and usually they tell me they're 2, maybe 3 out of 10 as far as pain. And so you typically will have more pain on a single extraction than a process like this. So,
is that right? It sounds crazy expensive. I mean, dentures are pretty expensive as it is, and what you do sounds pretty crazy expensive.
Well, expensive is relative to the value that it gives, right? So for patients that come in, they seek me out because they've gotten to a point where they literally just do not want to continue to have the same experience. When you can't chew the food you love, when your smile is inhibiting all your important relationships and your work and your health. I mean, people typically come in and they say, "Gosh, I just wish I'd done this sooner."
I think I want to come down there and watch you do this one of these days. Can I come down with a mask and a gown on and get a patient's permission and watch you do that? I think I'd like to do that.
It would be an honor. It would be an honor to have you in.
Well, I'm going to do that. This is Brian Hendricks at Dream Dental Implants. They're located in downtown Salt Lake. And you said go to a Facebook page or a website. What is that? Yeah,
so dreamdentalimplants.com, or if you go to our Facebook page, Dream Dental Implant Center, Dream Dental Implants. And we have a YouTube page. A lot of people see me from all over the country and even internationally, and they watch my YouTube videos, which I spend a lot of time doing what we're doing right now, which is answering questions. And
well, you teach this stuff to other dentists, right?
Yes, yeah. I have doctors. So within my facility, it's 15,000 square feet. I have doctors coming in usually every 2 or 3 months to do some teaching with me. Right now, with the coronavirus, we haven't done that, but we're excited. We're looking to probably have some more doctors coming in August. But yeah, I mean, I love to teach. It's my passion. My staff, they laugh that if I'm not teaching something, I'm not happy. And I think it's just I'm a giver by nature, and knowledge is, I think, the best thing to give. And when you can empower a doctor to go and change lives, then I think that's pretty special.
Well, you've taught me a few things, and I will come down there very soon as it's safe enough for you, and put on a mask and watch what you do. And I won't interrupt you and ask a lot of questions. I'll just watch, and I'll save my questions for later. And maybe whatever I see, we can put on this podcast sometime.
That would be amazing. I think that'd be awesome.
All right, Dr. Brian Hendricks, we will do it at Dream Dental Implants. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
So now we're talking to the former mayor of Salt Lake City, and that would be, of course, Rocky Anderson. And there he is. How are you, Rocky?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. So I want to catch up with you. I know that you're into jailhouse reform, not only here in Salt Lake County, but all across the state. But first, I want to catch up with you a little bit. What have you been doing lately?
Well, since I left the mayor's office, I worked at a nonprofit human rights organization.
Okay.
for about 4 years.
Okay.
Started the Justice Party in 2011, ran as its nominee for president in 2012.
Yeah.
Taught a couple of courses at the University of Utah for 2 semesters,
All right.
and then I've come back to the practice of law.
All right. Justice Party. What do you think of the parties we got now? And what do you got? Justice Party, is it gone or what's going on?
I don't think anybody has much love for either of these parties. They've totally betrayed us. They're corrupt. They live off of the money that does corrupt politics, and we need a new party. The vast majority of people in this country say they want another alternative, and it's not just some fringe third party. We need a new majority party, and that's what we intend to do.
Well, you know what they say about that. Well, remember what Ralph Nader did, and he got blamed for stealing the election over to the Republicans?
I would never do that. I'm
Okay.
good friends with Ralph Nader, and I know he has very strong views about having not spoiled that race. It really had to do with the way Gore ran his campaign. He didn't even take his own home state. But
I know, but there it is on either side. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I would never act as a spoiler. I wouldn't take one vote away from whoever's running against our current president, Trump. I think he's been disgraceful. I think he's done this nation so much harm. And I think, frankly, he's suffering from some severe mental problems. We all know that he's narcissistic, and that's a dangerous mental illness. And we definitely need change. And so what we're about is building for the next 4 years a majority party, providing a home for people who have had it with politics as usual and this political duopoly of the Republican and Democratic parties.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I'll have you back for that. We'll talk more about that as that gets forward. But now what you're up to, Lisa Ostler. You certainly know that name because you won a $950,000 lawsuit over her death at the Salt Lake County Jail. You have a lot to say about that, but I need to ask you, is that a one-off?
No, absolutely not. What we discovered in this case, and this is why we took this case on, so we could dig in with subpoena power, take depositions, and get to the bottom of what's going on with Salt Lake.
Lisa Ostler, first, who is she, and tell me about the case.
Lisa Ostler is she's a 37-year-old mother of 3 wonderful children. She had Crohn's disease, had been prescribed opioids. Like so many people across this country, thousands and thousands of people, she became hooked on heroin because it's cheaper and easier to access than opioids. And she was arrested. And instead of taken in for drug treatment and rehabilitation like she should have been, it would have been the most constructive, cost-effective, positive thing to do. They do what they usually do.
Any priors? Do you have any priors? A prior arrest?
Yeah, she had some minor priors. She wasn't a seller. She was a great mom, a great person. When I hear her sister, especially Liz, describe her, it brings you to tears.
So she goes into the Salt Lake County Jail after she gets arrested, and she is abandoned. Well, I don't know if abandoned is the right word, but she's left alone in this isolation cell and died.
No, she wasn't in isolation per se, but de facto she was, because she was put into a cell all by herself. At times she was locked in, and nobody can explain the reasons she was locked in when other inmates were able to walk around, but she couldn't leave her cell. She was dying of peritonitis. It has nothing to do with drug use. It's because they didn't give her prescribed medications, first of all. And she had a perforated ulcer that ate through her intestinal lining, and the fluid from her intestines went into her abdominal cavity, causing her.
But she died within 40 hours or something of being locked in that jail cell?
No, she was 3 days.
3 days.
Yeah. Well, she went from medical quarantine, which is where they put people when they first come in and they do the medical workups, and then they took her down to her unit 8C. Where she only came out of her cell once, and it was because of mandated clothing exchange.
Right.
And you can see her on the video holding her abdomen, bent over, hardly able to walk.
Yes.
Inmates said the inmates that saw her said she was like
Okay.
walking death. They were terrified for her.
So you win a lawsuit, which is only money. I understand. We've lost a mother and a sister and a wife, but the question is this a one-off? You are fighting harder than just Mr. Hustler. Yeah.
This was not a one-off at all. This was a systemic and a culture of horrible problems, a culture of cruelty.
You said was.
Almost
is this past tense?
No. It has been for years. I tried a case before the same federal judge we had in this case 23 years ago against the Salt Lake County Jail for the death of a man whose serious medical condition was ignored. He died. Nothing has changed in these 23 years. These folks who work at the jail are so disdainful toward the inmates. And I'm talking about nurses and the housing officers. There are a few exceptions, but most of them leave because they're so disgusted.
What do you want to do? What are you asking for? And is this just Salt Lake, by the way, Salt Lake County, or is this Utah?
Well, this is Salt Lake County Jail that we know about, and all these other deaths that have occurred there, and one woman losing her 27-week-old fetus because of them ignoring all of her complaints.
Yes.
And finally, by the time she was taken to the hospital, that not only was the fetus dead, but it had been dead for so long she lost her uterus and will never be able to have children again. She's now suffering from postnatal psychosis as a result of this absolute indifference by those at the Salt Lake County Jail.
Are you going to sue them?
Are
you going to sue them over this? Apparently, you're trying to force change of some sort.
You know, the lawsuit for Lisa.
Yes.
Taught us enough. We learned enough about the administration, about the policies, the violations of policies, the total brushing off of the inmates' interests, and also the falsification of medical records and the destruction of evidence in which the DA's office really was complicit, because 4 days after Lisa's death,
the
DA's office sends out a litigation hold letter to everybody saying, save everything, save all the videos, emails, audio tapes, save everything having to do with Lisa Osler, so we can gather them and retain this evidence. And by the time we sue them, videotape is destroyed, audio tape is destroyed,
all right,
destroyed.
All right, but I'm looking at the future now. What do you want to do? Do we have to plow this jail into the ground and build a new one? I say figuratively.
Definitely heads ought to roll. There were people who were involved in the falsification of medical records need to go. There's not been one disciplinary action taken. Lisa died because she wasn't given the right medication that was ordered for her. Right. She died because they were ordered to do assessments, and that included the monitoring of vital signs. They didn't do the vital signs after they got 2 deteriorating vital signs. First, she had a heart rate of 119, then 100.
We're talking about Lisa.
This is
talking about Lisa. That's right. Is there an additional problem there, or is this a one-off? This is what
what I'm getting to.
All right.
So she wasn't given the assessments that if they had done them, they would have seen there was a serious problem and they would have gotten her help.
For Lisa.
Let her stand by as she's having this increasing heart rate, which their own policy requires that they go get a physician.
Yes, that's Lisa.
Heart rate is over 110. So then you get into the treatment of other inmates and find that all these other inmates, mandatory assessments were not being done. These are other inmates who have died in custody at the Salt Lake County Jail.
And what are you going to do about that?
Well, we're trying to get word out, like through you, and thank you very much for helping the public learn, because the only way people learn, we hear so much about the fake media from our president and all these others. The media is our only way of finding anything out in the world that we don't witness ourselves.
That's right. Just because you don't like a story doesn't make it fake. I understand.
Absolutely essential that this community know about the medieval conditions, the sadistic conditions at our Salt Lake County jail and demand that change be made. We've already heard from some city council or county council members. I've already heard from a number of legislators. I've talked to a number of legislators about doing an intense independent audit of every in custody death at the Salt Lake County jail. Something.
And the next step. And the next step, because so far we're just talking.
No, that's not talking. It's showing how widespread all of this is, which we've already done in our case. And then it's putting in an inspector general. It's making sure that there's appropriate discipline for people who have violated the rules, who have violated decent standards.
So what's the timetable? About 10 years?
I'm sorry?
What's the timetable? About 10 years, I say sarcastically?
No. This timetable should be virtually immediate. There should be an audit done, but nobody should hesitate in going back and doing the discipline of people who, including jerking their licenses. Doppel should jerk the licenses of anybody who participated or failed to participate in the care of Lisa Osler and these other inmates. We need a policy that every mental health worker. There was one mental health worker, inmate goes in, says, I'm afraid I'm going to kill myself. I don't want to do that, but I'm really afraid I'm going to kill myself. The mental health worker, in his own notes, says, well, I gave him a pamphlet. He said he didn't think it would do any good. David Walker goes back to his cell, no follow-up, no mental health services for him, and he commits suicide. Now, when you get to know his mother and his brother,
All right.
Kentucky and Virginia,
Yeah.
and see the devastation of that family caused because these people who are paid by we the taxpayer giving such short shrift to the interests of
Well, I
these.
got an idea. How about a grand jury?
A grand jury would be fine, but we elect people. They're paid to do the job. They're paid to set policy. They're paid. There ought to be intense oversight over the operations of the Salt Lake County Jail, and these people should be fired. And given our current sheriff, she wasn't sheriff at the time of Lisa Osler's death, but she's been sheriff during a lot of these other very serious problems.
Yes, Rosie Rivera, yes.
You interview her, you literally see her shoulders shrug and say, well, this is a jail. In Daniel Davis's case, she said to the media, to the public, she shrugs her shoulders and says, well, yes, he's dead, but this is a jail and inmates get into altercations and this kind of thing happens. No, Daniel Davis was murdered. There was no altercation. You can imagine Daniel Davis's mother when she hears our sheriff try to say, well, maybe he had it coming because he got in an altercation.
No, we can't have that. Okay, you know what frustrates me? All of this stuff is out there, and we keep saying, I hear this a lot, and it makes me nuts, just as a member of the public, news media, if you will. You know what we should do? You know what we ought to do? You know what we might do? And I don't know what the next step is. All of these things you allege are going wrong at the jail. Yeah. And boy, someday we should. You know what should happen?
And that's why it goes on for decades. And it goes on beyond from sheriff to sheriff to sheriff. At least Sheriff Kennard took steps to go in and try and let people know you can't sit around as mental health workers and nurses and watch movies and engage in social media for hours every day. This is happening at the Salt Lake County Jail. I heard about it from a mental health worker. He used to be there. She talked to a nurse. She says, so what do you do all day long? He said, all we do is hand out medications and watch movies.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing? All these people are dying in custody at the Salt Lake County Jail.
The next time we can put our finger on somebody actually doing something other than the lawsuit you won, but then, which is the one-off, but for the rest of the people in there, let me know when something happens and we'll talk again. I have two things to talk to you about: the evolution of the Justice Party eventually, and the next step in jail reform, if you will.
All right.
Rocky Anderson, lawyer, activist, Justice Party head, and former mayor of Salt Lake City. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bill. Great.
Bye. In this time of pandemic, maybe we want to call somebody to help us. Maybe we want to see if we can do it yourself. This is John Holland. Hi, John. How are you?
Good morning, Bill.
He is with All Utah Plumbing. I have known John for many years as a Gephardt approved company. And, he does plumbing and HVAC, heating and air conditioning. But you have put new emphasis on DIY, do it yourself. Sounds like you're trying to put yourself out of business, but that's not it, is it?
Nope, it's all about helping people.
So what are you doing? You're making videos, and what sort of things are you going to do?
Yeah, so we're going to do how-to videos, basically from toilet repair stuff to sprinkler repair stuff, many things of around your house where you could do, maintaining that air conditioner, maintaining the furnace, many things like that. But we're also going to do fun things. Just with this whole program that we're starting, we're going to reach out even to other industries, that like detailing cars, things like that, and just have fun with it, and hopefully little tips of something every time we talk about doing other things, all the way down to even golfing. So it's going to be fun and entertaining. It has been, and so.
You play golf?
I do. I'm horrible at it, but
well, then why are we going to get? Yeah, we don't want to get tips from you on golf. All right, where will
I can tip people of what not to do. They just check the swing out, and they'll go, "Yeah, that's what you don't do."
That's right. Okay, that's right. So, where will we find these things, and how complicated will you get?
So you can find it on the YouTube channels, All Utah Plumbing, and then our Facebook, which is All Utah Plumbing, and then the other media groups are on Instagram as well. So if they just basically are typing in All Utah Plumbing, it'll take them there and they can check it out.
How complicated are we going to get? And here's what I mean. Sometimes when I don't know what I'm doing and I'm, I've got a leak or a plumbing repair or a faucet that doesn't work or whatever it is, before I call you, sometimes I look at the project and I say, if I tear this apart, I can, and eventually I get lost and I have to call you. I can't do any damage. Is that a good attitude on my part? That
is a perfect attitude. That's exactly what I want. People that feel like they want to just give it a shot. Well, I say go for it, because you can't do anything that I can't fix. So with how complicated we're going to get, I call it detailed. So I've watched a lot of how-to videos of what other people have done and things like that. And so I'm making these videos just a little bit longer to try to step by step the things that we're doing, that this way might make it so they actually were able to accomplish it. And then some of the things I say in not every video, but we'll say it here today.
Okay.
Whatever this project is. Right now, we're going to say it's fixing a toilet.
Okay.
Okay, you got to fix the inside of the toilet. Okay, you're going to do that Saturday. Is a great day to do it because you're off, if you're off Saturday.
Yeah.
All right. So sit back, take a deep breath, calm down, and just imagine this is going to take me all day. Okay, great. You'll be done in an hour. The problem that a lot of times I get called out on is they were fixing it. They were almost there, but they got frustrated because they have a picnic that they want to be to, and they just got in too big of a hurry. And if they just allow time, they'll be like, wow, that wasn't bad, because they weren't under pressure.
Okay, all right. Can you tell me this? Give me this tip. This is for me personally now. Is there a toilet valve that's worth a tinker's dinker in this world? You know, the toilet valve, I'm not talking about the thing where you turn it on and off. I'm talking about, you flush, it automatically fills the tank, and that's the valve.
Yep.
And I seem to have to replace those ones. Is there one that's worth? I'll pay the money if I knew of one that worked.
Yes. So we can, it's special order. And so we have to order it. Oh. And not too many people want to pay the money for it, but it's all brass. It's a Mansfield. And the entire mechanism is just like the old but they call it a ball cock assembly.
That's right. Yeah.
It's got the ball on the end of it, and it's up and down, and it's all brass. That thing will, I don't know, 30 years, 25
Really?
years.
How much is that thing roughly? Because the little stupid ones that you have to replace every year are about what, eight or nine or 10 or $12 each, right?
Right. That's why they're so popular. So these run right around $45 just to purchase it.
Oh, that's
And
nothing.
then you got to purchase the ball separate of that. So
I'm
at
getting
any
one.
rate,
Do I call you or just go online? I
yeah,
want one.
you can actually, you should be able to go online. I don't purchase that way.
Okay.
But from my manufacturer, when people get enough, I can get some, and you have to buy the right size. But at any rate, they are available to answer your question.
Oh, that's great. And how about a sprinkler valve? Is there a sprinkler valve that's worth a tinker's dinker?
Yeah,
Because they
so
fail and they're such a pain to replace. Sometimes they're glued, sometimes screwed. Is there one of those that's worth a tinker's dinker?
yes, so in my opinion, the best sprinkler valve out there for residential use, some commercial, depending upon how big of piping they're using. But it would be a Rainbird DVF 100.
Bravo, Foxtrot 100.
Yep. So it's D for dog,
D.
F, so DVF 100. And that is a Rainbird. And that daggone thing is wonderful, and it's rebuildable. So therefore, usually the bottom part of it, you got the top part, and you see these screws.
Yeah.
Well, you can take those, shut the water off, take the screws off, and it's actually cheaper to buy a whole brand new valve, take that valve apart, and put it on your old body, and voila, you got a brand new valve again.
And
they're wonderful.
Is it because the diaphragm, I don't know what goes wrong. Diaphragm's in there or
Diaphragm,
something.
yep.
And I just hate digging into that thing every year, even if I drain it. So it's not a question of frozen. It's just something went wrong.
Right. Are you on secondary water?
No, primary water.
Okay. Well, you might not. It's probably the brand of valves you're buying. The Rainbirds last longer, but I do know there's a step up of Rainbird that works better on the garbage water, I call it. But at any rate, you'll be fine with that DVF 100. You would have to, rebuild your manifold where all the sprinkler lined up. You would have to redo that to do it. Or you call me and I'll do it, and I'll make you buy me golf.
All right. Maybe I'll do just that. See, we just did a DIY just now, didn't we, John?
That's it. That's how we like it.
John Holland, who is a professional licensed plumber with All Utah Plumbing, is now not going to license you and me, but he's going to show us how to do it. John Holland, I'll check in with you again shortly if that's all right.
That sounds great. You have a great day.
You bet. Thanks, John.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's talk about shipwrecks, but not the kind of shipwreck you might be thinking about. Let's talk about a local Utah shipwreck. Let me introduce my friend and the park manager at the Great Salt Lake Marina, Dave Shearer. Hi, Dave.
How you doing, Bill?
I am doing fine. There's a shipwreck you've discovered out there. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there is. There's an old shipwreck. We don't know exactly when it dates back to. It's a steel hulled boat, which tells us it's probably a working boat. Probably maybe one of the railroad fleet back from the turn of the 20th century. And,
the railroad fleet, they built a trestle out there. Is that what you're talking about?
1902, the railroad crossed the Great Salt Lake. They built a wooden trestle. And then after they did that, about 1950s, they built a solid causeway across the Great Salt Lake. And the railroad had a lot of boats out here, wooden boats, steel hulled boats. Many of these were abandoned over the years through storms or whatever. And we have this wreck that's popped up just right next to the Great Salt Lake Marina on the beach. And with the winds we had Friday night, it uncovered it.
How big is this boat? Or how big was this boat when it was floating?
We're guessing, from what we can tell from the wreckage that's exposed, probably about 40 feet, which would put it in line with most of the railroad fleet.
Okay. And like you said, it looked like a working boat that a bunch of guys were on and just went out and built the trestle and whatever else.
So most of the boats out here, the pleasure boats, like what you have, most people have.
Yes.
Back in the 1800s, 1900s, they were usually wooden boats, or later in the 20th century, they were fiberglass boats. It
Okay.
was very rare to see a pleasure boat built out of steel out here. Just very
Okay.
rare.
So these things were not huge, 200-foot boats, so you could actually launch them there. I can't imagine launching a 200 or 300-foot workboat out there. You could build them elsewhere and launch them to the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, for a good example, a lot of the railroad fleet came from San Francisco. They were boats that were used by the railroad out there in San Francisco when they were doing a lot of work. And then when they built the causeway and the trestle, they brought them up here to the Great Salt Lake and used them here. Many of them went back to San Francisco afterwards, but a lot of them stayed here, and there's still several boats from the railroad fleet scattered around the lake.
And we still see working boats out there. I mean, the shrimpers have working boats, that type of thing, right?
Yeah, there's during brine shrimp season, there's 60, 80 boats out on the Great Salt Lake at any given time. And most of those are aluminum hull.
Did this thing surprise you when the wind blew and it turned up this thing?
It surprised me a little bit. This is the second wreck we found right here at the Great Salt Lake. The other one we know is a railroad fleet boat. It's called the W.E. Marsh No. 4, and it's literally right off the break wall. But yeah, this one surprised me. The wind just came in at the right lake level and the right strength to erode the sand, get rid of the sand. And you can clearly see the bow, and we think you can see the stern. It looks like the stern, and of course the midship's torn apart pretty badly.
So there are two boats out there I can see. Where can
There are at least two boats right here at the Great Salt Lake Marina.
Okay, they're not right at it, but would you direct me to actually see these wrecks?
Well, a good way is the one boat's underwater still. The W.E. Marsh No. 4 is still underwater, but it's only 5 feet of water. And when the water's crystal clear, you can swim over it and see it. You can even dive down and touch it. And it's just right off our observation deck at the marina parking lot. The other one, the one that just got uncovered just recently, it's less than a quarter mile away from our parking lot to the northeast.
All right. Well, that doesn't sound too hard to find. Let me ask you this. Slightly different subject. How's the water level this year? Are we all going to be sailing? How's it doing?
We're not doing the best. We started out great. We started out phenomenal. We had great snowpack. We were looking good. And then all of a sudden, March came along and dried up. April was the driest on record for us. And May, we're on track to be the driest May ever, too. And so our snowpack just disappeared. We're already going down here. And I am worried. I'm worried that a lot of the boats won't be sailing by fall.
Really? And that's after you dredged it last year, dredged out the marina and dredged out the little channel that goes out there. And we still might be below, 4 feet in the channel?
We might be below 4 feet by fall, in the channel.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
Well, my friend Dave Shearer, the park manager out there at the Great Salt Lake, thanks for introducing us to these wrecks out there.
Sounds good. Come out and enjoy your boat and get sailing.
I will. Talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Whew, did you make it to the end? That was quite a jam-packed podcast, just like I promised. And we'll be having another one just like it in about a week. Make sure you tune in for that. In the meantime, do you have some questions? Do you have some comments? Because I want to hear them. Send them to Bill at GephardtApproved.com. That's the Bill Gephardt Show, our podcast for this time. See you next time.